Maybe we kind of center a little bit more. It's been about 100 degrees. And for some reason, I took this 90-degree heat moment to start filming a book video. As you can see over here, and I love books. I also have 2 other bookshelves that I'm looking at right here that I might insert footage, I might not. And this video is for my best friend and my sister specifically. But if you're not one of those 2 people, then welcome to my little corner of my bedroom where I have all of my book things. It's actually not that late. Well, it's like 10 p.m. so it's kind of late, so we could call it like a little late night corner or whatever. I have a nice glass of water in my cup. It's very extra, and feel free to join me in a nice cup of water or whatever else you're having this evening. I also have over here a little tea that's almost gone. And at my feet, I have about a lot of books, like 30 maybe. So today we're going to be going through all of my favorite books. And I am doing this for a couple of reasons. First, mostly just because I want to look at all of my favorite books, touch them. I feel like they've just been like on my shelf for the last couple years, just gathering dust, and I haven't really picked them up and like enjoyed them like I used to. So I feel like just me holding a book is going to just like feel amazing. Secondly, I am in quite a bit of a reading slump lately, and I think that this will help me get out of it. This list is like comprehensive of like everything that I've ever loved, like to the best of my ability. That's what it is. And you can follow it. You can find this list that I'm basing all of these off of in my Goodreads. It's my favorites bookshelf. There's another one called subpar faves, and the subpar faves are not, other than one book that which I'll talk about, all of these other ones are in the favorites. So the difference between the favorites and the subpar faves, I'm honestly enjoyed some of the subpar faves more like during the reading experience than I enjoyed these books that I'm about to show you. However, I in the long term have gotten way more out of these books than the other ones. The subpar faves are kind of more like a potato chip versus these are the fine wine books that I have found in the last however many years. Now, a little history about me and my reading journey. I started out reading like very young. My mom read to me, and then and we'll go through some of those today. Some of those books that we read together while I was growing up. I read a lot in middle school, and then I stopped reading in high school. Well, not totally. I read like fan fiction and stuff, but I did not read a single book that I was like assigned to read. I didn't like pick up a new book like from a bookstore or a library or anything the entirety of high school. But I was definitely in the fan fiction sphere. I wrote a fan fiction. Then I finally found reading again after like a sucky freshman year of college, and I was packing up my dorm and I was like hightailing out of there to a different college, and I was just in my feels, and I picked up reading again. So the 5 categories are going to be for my list, which is just like, this is just how they turned out to be. I'm gonna be going through a like fantasy section, I have a romance section, I have like a children's lit, like classic or like children's literature section, I have a like classics section, and then I have a general or like unmarked section, basically general fiction. So we are going to start all the way back at the very beginning of my reading journey with the children's fiction. The first one is Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. And I actually did not read this book whenever I was a kid, which is kind of funny for it to be the very first one. By the way, if you're hearing that, that's my cat, and he might be yelling and getting angry, but he's fine. So I didn't actually read Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie, like the actual novel version of it, until I was an adult. And I found it just because growing up, my very favorite like things ever were like the animated Peter Pan movies, particularly the second one, which is kind of funny, the Return to Neverland one. It was just like an integral part of my childhood, and I decided to pick up Peter Pan probably before I was even 20. Maybe I was 20, because the booktuber Murphy Napier read it, or like she always talked about it, and it was her favorite, and I decided to pick it up, and I just loved it. I loved everything about it. I have like little annotations in it. It's very different from the vibe of the animated movies, but it's just a wonderful thing to see like the origins of like where Peter Pan came from. The boy who in the Disney movie was like sweet and funny and a little bit mischievous, and in this one he was quite different, and you don't really like him that much, but I kind of did, and it's a super sweet story. The next book I have for you is a Gail Carson Levine book, and I'm gonna give you like this many seconds to guess what it is. It is not Elle-Enchanted, it's The Two Princesses of Bamarre. This is my childhood favorite. It's so good. I read it again as an adult, and I still loved it. It follows a 12-year-old girl, Addie, who has to go off on this adventure. Even though she's timid and nervous, she has little helpful things along the way to help her out. And it's just such a sweet story. It has a character named Reese in it, which if you're in the Sarah J. Maas girly, then this is the origin of Reese, I guess. There's danger. It actually feels frightening at times. Like, of course, it's for children, so it's not like crazy, but it's fun and it's sweet. This book feels to me like in the scene in Beauty and the Beast when Belle is singing and she's reading a new book, picking it up from the library. This feels like the book that she is picking up and reading. Next we have Prince Caspian by C.S. Lewis as my third favorite children's book. Not third favorite, you know what I mean. And I just love it so much. I remember a few years ago I was reading this, and this is a book that actually all of these children's classics are books that I have picked up time and time again. Not just when I have fond memories of them from when I was a kid, but I've also reread them as an adult, every single one of them. And really this stands for the whole series of Narnia, which is just an amazing series anyways. It's another like fantasy, like my gateway into fantasy, which I love now. But this one in particular, I remember reading it a few years ago, and I listened to the soundtrack from the movie while I was reading it, and I was just so mesmerized the whole time. Like I would say that it felt like I was watching a movie, but it was better than that. It was the feeling that you get whenever you're reading an amazing book and time has stopped and you're just like sitting in your own thoughts and you are existing in this universe even though you're here. Like you're completely transported, and that's how I felt, which is amazing for a children's fiction book to do for a grown adult, which is just amazing. If you don't know, this book follows 4 siblings who are brought back into the world of Narnia because there's a new threat and humans have come and they have to help save the day with Aslan and such, but I don't know why you wouldn't know this book already. But even if you don't, you better get on that. Next. Sorry if the camera angle changed. Rumi came home, had to say hello. I'm back. And I've realized that I need to speed up because I have a lot of books ahead of me and it's already 10:30. And this is my cat. Anyways, we're continuing. Next up we have, and it doesn't need to be even hardly announced, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone is what I'm holding, but this is representative of the whole series. My favorite one was the Half-Blood Prince growing up because of course I love all the macabre, the sad, the dreary vibes that it had. The lack of a happy ending really gets me, I guess. And this book series really just means a lot to me. Growing up, my mom and I read it together, like out loud in bed. Like it's basically how I learned how to read. And then later on, like this is the only series that I continued to go back to whenever I was like in my slumps. Whenever I was in high school and I was never reading, I would still read Harry Potter, and of course I would read all the Harry Potter fanfiction, and I wrote a Harry Potter fanfiction, you know, all the things. I continued to reread the whole series with the girl that I nannied growing up, while she was growing up, which was cool. And it's just like a fun, amazing story to be able to pass along. And I don't even need to tell you what it's about. You know what it's about, and you've probably read it, so yeah. Harry Potter. And finally, on the children's lit list, the last book that I have is Flipped by Wendelin Van Dronen. And this book, it means a lot to me actually just in adulthood because I did not read it as a kid. It's the only one on this list that I didn't, and I actually found it as an adult, and I found it through watching the movie. And I just loved the movie so much. I loved how sweet and like kind of like slice of life, coming of age it felt, and it was just such a sweet time. It follows a girl and it follows a boy when they're like younger, like young kids, all the way up to like 8th grade or so. And at first the girl really has a big crush on the guy, and he is like creeped out by her, and then about halfway through it flips and she realizes that maybe he's not all he's cracked up to be, and he realizes that she's more than he really deserves, to be honest. And it's just such a sweet book. It takes place, I think the movie has it in like the 50s, but I think that it's set in a more modern time in this book, and I really just love this author. I actually got to meet her at a event at my Barnes & Noble one time, and she signed my book. And then I also got another one called The Peach Rebellion, and she also signed that one, which that's what she was there for, promoting, and it was pretty cool. It was really fun to meet her, and I just loved her book, and yeah, you should give it a go. It's not just for kids. It just makes me so happy. I love it. That's the end of the children's lit section. Moving on to, drumroll, let's do a quick section. Let's do romance. I'm gonna hold off on classics because there's a lot of them on this list. Okay. So this is one of my favorite genres, but it's also one of the genres that I'm the most picky about when it comes to it going on this list, because it needs to have every single thing ticked off, or it just needs to be amazing. And there are exactly 2 romance books that I've read, like strictly like contemporary romance, that have made this list. The first one is People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry, And I actually only read this one like last year, and it was amazing. I read it before the movie, or I might have read it after the movie came out, but I read it before I watched the movie, and I just ate it up. I think I watched the movie right after, actually. It follows a girl and a boy who meet in college, and then they go on vacations once a year together, and they start out like somewhat more platonic, and then they have feelings, and it goes from there. One of the biggest reasons that I love this book is that it felt like such a getaway from like my own life, but then it didn't just leave me there in like the fictional sphere, because I know a lot of people read books to escape, for that escapism, and this book has that, like, so good, but it kind of like at the same time is very grounding and like tugs you back into your normal like life and your own thoughts, and is very, I guess, reflective is the word that I was looking for. That's how I felt whenever I was reading this book. It was extremely well written. Anything Emily Henry writes is well written. I aspire to be more like her. The People We Meet on Vacation, aka my most recent and my most favorite 5-star romance book. My one other romance book that I am using, that I have in this category, contemporary romance, actually does not fully follow my guidelines that I set up, because this one I just enjoyed so much that it made it to this list. But I wouldn't say that it's like the best writing, but it just really spoke to me. And that book is From Lukov with Love by Mariana Zapata. And it's been a hot minute since I read this book, so, but I can still tell you about it. I know it, and I won't even look at Goodreads yet. So From Lukov with Love follows a girl, and she's like 26, and she is a figure skater, and she was a really good one, but now she's kind of aging out. Like they stopped skating pretty young. She was always, I think she was a singles figure skater, and now she's moving to teams, or maybe she lost her old partner, can't remember, you'll have to find out. And she ends up having to team with her like annoying rival figure, and he is very annoying to her, and it's an enemies to lovers, and it's a super slow burn. They do not get together for the longest time, like end of the book, I think. Like last couple pages. It's so good. It's so good. I remember reading it while I was camping, and I think I read it in like 2 sittings, and I still think about it. And not only is the romance good, very, very good, mind you, not only is the romance good, but also I really liked the female main character, especially. She had a lot of like inner things that she was going through, and she was dealing with like letting go of something that she loved and worked so hard at, and kind of felt like she had to be letting it go. And then there was also just this like tenacity that she had of like, I'm gonna continue, I'm gonna follow through with it. And I just appreciated her dedication to working hard. There were like many scenes where I remember she would like get up so early and like go to the ice rink and just work so hard. And that was very motivating and meaningful to me while reading that book. So that's why it was like really the huge standout that was to me. Next up, let's do, you know I'm saving fantasy for last. Let's do general. I don't know if this is general. I put it in general, but it's technically YA, but I don't have enough YA stuff to like put here. I guess technically some of the children's lit could have been YA, but I'm calling that more like middle grade kind of vibes, you know. But this one is for sure YA, and it's very popular, and it also needs no introduction. It's the Hunger Games series, particularly Sunrise on the Reaping at the moment. The movie comes out in November, and I'm so excited. I loved this book so much. We're all ready to sob, we're all ready to cry. I actually have a sweatshirt that has the little doves, of Lenore doves. It has her geese on the sweatshirt. And I'm not gonna talk about the Hunger Games because you need to read it. And if you know, you know, and if you don't, then what are you doing? You need to read the Hunger Games, and you need to read both Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and Sunrise on the Reaping. But if you're not interested in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, then I would say it's okay for you to read this one first and then read Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, because like this one is just on another level, really, I think. So yes, do pick this up. That's all I'll say about the matter. Oh, you didn't see that. Next we have The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And I was just having to do a little look-see up of the synopsis of this again, because it's been quite a hot minute since I read this, but I, like, immediately as I was reading through my old review of it and the synopsis of the book, I was immediately like, oh yeah, I remember why I liked that so much. And I think that I am due for a reread of this book. This follows Nora, who is a character who is pretty down on life, to put it lightly, at the beginning of this book. Basically, she decides to end things, and then she goes into this weird liminal space, and which is like the Midnight Library, and she gets to see what her life would be like in different, like, if different choices had been made. And I remember picking this book up, and I'm just gonna read the Goodreads review. I said, as I closed this book, there were a few thoughts that I had. 1, wow, this was fantastic. 2, I wish I had been the one to write this. 3, I might cry. And 4, how in the world did this middle-aged man, Mr. Matt Haig, write about the internal dialogue of a woman so unbelievably well? Like, I adored this book. I would recommend it to anyone. It is without genre. It spoke to me as someone who has had that, like, feeling of being, like, stuck and unwilling to change, even though you want to change and you want to, but you're, like, happy to still wallow in things. And that is Nora and this book and the journey that it takes you on. If you have ever felt that way, then this book will be very meaningful. It like really helped me to go further towards my own passions and things that I care about in life. So, highly recommend. Now for a book that is kind of weird. Like, it kind of like veers towards, like, I don't know. This was a book that I was obsessed with, and it's called Sweet Francais by Irene Nemirovsky. For some reason there's a letter in here. I have no idea what that is or why it's in my book. Anyways, this was a book I went down like crazy rabbit holes for. I was deeply obsessed with it. I read it cover to cover, annotated it quite thoroughly. Like full on, like, took notes about this book because it was written by a Jew during Nazi occupation, in France, and she was an author, and throughout the occupation she wrote this book, and it was a suite, which in music, you know, is I think it's 5 parts of that make up a larger like group of music, and this was supposed to be the 5 suites, or the 5 stories that would all kind of blend together a little bit. So this book in itself is fiction, but the context around it is really interesting. There's 3 different stories in this book. I think it's 3. It might be 2. But then there's a big giant appendix with all of Irene's notes that she wrote about the future ones. However, unfortunately, she ended up getting taken to a concentration camp before she finished writing. So hence my obsession. I just really liked reading through everything and like trying to think about like her in this time where she's being oppressed and she's writing these stories. Oh yeah, okay, so I was right and a little bit wrong. There were 2 parts that were finished and the 3rd part was mapped out, and there were originally supposed to be 5 parts. The first part, Storm in June, was that followed many points of view from one moment in history with a variety. So there were men, there were women, there were rich people, there were poor people, there was a priest, there were soldiers, teens, mothers, you name it. The second part, which if you have seen the movie adaptation, it follows the second part, the Dolce part, mostly because that part is a little bit odd. It's a German soldier and a French woman, and they fall in love, and it's kind of like weird, but a very interesting story. And if you're like, it's like definitely forbidden. So I was, after watching the movie, that's how I discovered this book, and it was very interesting to like watch it unfold. And then continuing in this book, there was a journaling correspondence section, which was really honestly just like the most fascinating thing to read about, where she was writing notes about the book, the next section in the suite that she wanted to write, which was going to be titled Captivity. And then she ended up going into captivity herself, and she did end up passing away, unfortunately. But it was like just the whole concept of this book and the fact that it exists and is like something that you can like hold in your hands and read and like learn about her, and like you can kind of see more of the writing process as well in her notes. It's just amazing, really cool to see. So while I don't know if it would be for everyone, if you have a special interest in it, this is a good one. And continuing with sad and sadness and depressing things, we have A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. Basically a depiction of immense grief and like hard times, like the burdens of life, and you get to see a boy as he's understanding more about the sadness in his life, and how it takes form. It's beautiful. It made me cry. Not only did it make me cry, it made me cry for like the entire last quarter of the entire thing. It made me like dry heave sob. So if you want that, pick it up. I don't really want to say much more about this, because it's something that you need to experience, and you could sit down in about an hour or 2 and you could read the whole thing cover to cover. Just make sure you don't have to go anywhere afterwards, because you'll be a mess. Before I put it down. this is like the one book that if somebody's like, I want to cry or I want to read something heartbreaking, this is the one. Here you go. Another book, very similarly to A Monster Calls, which one of the things I'm realizing now is that a lot of my favorites have something in common, and that is they make me cry. Any like huge emotions that they can pull out of me, that's very influential on whether they become a favorite, I'm realizing. Because this one also made me sob. Not for as long, but maybe in a more like gut-punching way for like a couple seconds. It was really hard, and it is a historical fiction that I'm sure you've seen. It's The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak, and it's such a unique book. It's from the perspective of death during World War II, and follows a young girl and a young boy while they're dealing with all of this. And this girl, she steals books, and she's putting on her like little front against the huge, big, terrible things that are happening in the middle of World War II. It's a beautiful story. You should read it if you haven't. The fact that it's narrated by death brings this book from 5 to 6 stars for me. It's one of the most unique narrative choices I've ever seen, and it's incredible. Next up we have A Voice in the Wind by Francine Rivers, and this is a Christian like romance fiction book, and it follows a girl who is sold as a slave in Rome during the midst of like Christians getting eaten by lions and things like that. So she continually proves her faith, even when she's like tested in trials. And particularly this guy, Marcus, who is technically like her slave owner, like she serves in his household, and they form a connection, and she resists it because she's a Christian, he's not, and he has this completely different way of life than she has, and it's really like motivational, influential to see her ability to stand firm in her faith even whenever she's being tested and like tried for many different ways and different things. And it's really cool to see how it ends up like working out or not working out, because this book has one of the craziest twists I've ever read. Like, what the heck? It's crazy. Like, you can like just read this book for like the last 20 pages because whew, that's wild. And then make sure you have the second book available immediately. Anyways, that's A Voice in the Wind. And the end of the general fiction section. Now, for my fourth section, we have the classics. And then a lot of these, I'm gonna kind of assume, like, I feel like a lot, like many of them already that I've been describing, like you already know what they are. But I guess maybe you don't, because you're not me. Like, maybe I just know all these books because they're my favorites. But they're all classics too. Anyways, I'll kind of explain what they are, but I kind of expect you to know most of these because they're classics. So, first we have the Anne of Green Gables series by L.M. Montgomery. Particularly in this one, I have Anne of the Island, and the reason that I chose this book to show you is because this one is just my favorite. This is the one that makes me most feel nostalgic. It has the romance part of it, which I like. And it's a book that you can just sit down in like a nice sunny park somewhere and you could just read half of it or the whole thing and just get lost in it. It follows Anne in her older years, like when she's becoming a teacher and she's falling in love, and Marilla is getting older, and like, I don't know, I guess it's just like my life stage. So, and as a teacher, I just, how could I not love it? And I do. Oop, there goes all my stuff. Now for a harsh detour, a book that does not make me feel good, a book that actually makes me feel like the most sick that I ever could, but also similarly to Sweet Francais, it's like a book that I have gone down so many rabbit holes in, just trying to understand it. I have bought most books by this author at this point, just because I want to understand. I want, like, as a person who likes to write, I want to get it. And like how like such a brilliant mind can come up with like and like write in such a beautiful and awful way. And of course I'm speaking of Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita, which is a really, really hard book to read. Like, wow, it's so hard, but it's like the worst and the best book I've ever read at the same time. It follows a 12-year-old girl, and, well, not really at all. It follows a pedophile man named Humbert, who follows and brings with him this 12-year-old girl. Basically, he like abducts her legally and takes her around and has a little joyride of his life with her and ruins her life in the process. And it's the most beautifully written book from the perspective of this awful, awful pedophile. I don't know what to say. It's so good and it's so awful. The author did not want to have a picture of a little girl on the cover because, of course, while this book is about a pedophile, it is not meant to be actually glorifying the pedophile. However, like, people in the 50s, like, if you look at the back cover, it says, a little blurb about it says, Lolita is not about sex, but about love. This makes it unique in my experience of contemporary novels. They call it a love story, and that's one of the reasons why it's like so talked about even today. Like, many versions of Lolita. I think there's 3 that I've seen. There's one like really old, like black and white. And then there's like the more recent one. I can't remember if there was another one between or before that. And they all just don't hit the mark of what it feels like Nabokov was actually trying to go for. It's poetry. It's poetry, and it's dark, and it's painful, and it's awful, and it's amazing, and it's maybe the best book I've ever read. And I want to write like this man. Read it, don't read it, I don't know. Next is Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl, and I read this a couple years ago for the first time because, as I said, I didn't read in high school. I think I was supposed to read this in high school, and then I didn't, and I pretended I did. And so I went back and I actually read it, and I realized what I was missing out on. I was expecting it to be dark and sad because, of course, we know that at the end of the diary, Anne Frank gets taken to a concentration camp and she dies, and she never gets to finish the diary. However, I was pleasantly surprised to find it sweet and funny and like coming of age, and like, yes, it has this like backdrop of like living in this hiding place and not getting to experience life the way that she was supposed to, but it also has her personality as this like young girl growing up, like, and like going through like puberty and stuff, and it was just so mesmerizing to read about. So if you ever get a chance, definitely do read The Diary of a Young Girl, because I guess the teachers were right, and you should read things like that. Now, before my streak of never reading, not even like buying the book that my teachers told me to read in high school, I did read in middle school, so I'm not sure what happened, but in 7th grade, I read this next book, which is Les Miserables by Victor Hugo, and this is my copy from 7th grade. You can see it's very worn and tattered, and there's an entire section that's coming out. I do now have another copy to read from, but I figured I would show you the OG today, but the new one that I have is very beautiful and nice, and I probably should have just shown you that one, but I felt nostalgic as I'm holding Les Mis that a lot of the books that I love, I either read the book first and then watched a movie adaptation, or like watched a movie adaptation then read the book. I think that like double experience with it probably has like helped it to stick in my mind more and helped me to like love it and visualize it, and like stories like Les Miserables and like Flipped and things like that that are like on a screen that I can watch help the story to like stay alive, when like of course I can't like go through and reread this book every year, but I can watch the 2-hour musical, which is nice. So suffice that to say, this book is not the musical, not even remotely. It's a really long, depressing book once again, and I think that probably that's part of the theme that I'm learning most about myself, is that even in 7th grade I wanted to put myself through 1,000 pages of misery. Ooh, which is another book that I should actually have on here. I need to add that to my favorites list. Misery by Stephen King. Unfortunately, I do not have it with me here and now. Actually, no, I don't have it with me here and now. But I really should add that to my favorites list, because Misery by Stephen King is like my favorite horror book ever. Anyways, back to Les Mis. I'm realizing that I think I need to reread this book, because it was and has been my favorite, one of my favorites for so long. But I'm realizing now as I'm talking about it that I still have a very 7th grade, middle school understanding of it. So I think this is going to be in my rereading horizon. This is one of the few that I have not gotten to as much, even though I've like kind of read snippets and abridged things, but I haven't read the unabridged one since I was 12, which needs to change. Anyways, that's Les Mis. My next favorite classic is Wuthering Heights by our good old Emily Bronte, and this book is it follows Heathcliff and Catherine as they fall in love, and it's extremely toxic, and it's at this really cool house, and it's a very atmospheric book, once again soaked in misery. It like tore me into so many different directions. I did not know how to feel about the characters. Half the time I didn't even know who we were talking about in this book, because like some characters have the same names and they're like doubled up, and it's very confusing at first, but then it makes sense. And it's just dark, and like the vibes are immaculate. Like you just want to like sit and just like look at the page and feel like you're there, feel like you're in the rustling like trees that don't have any leaves, and like in this like big giant like lush like green like pasture kind of place with this looming house behind you. It's like dark and creepy, and then there's just like tension and romance. And I have not seen the new Wuthering Heights movie yet, and I think I'm gonna watch it, but I heard that it's not like the book, so I don't know. You'll have to let me know if it's like worth it or not. But yeah, that's Wuthering Heights. It's amazing, and it's crazy, and it's kind of slow and weird and odd, but exciting at the same time. Alright, I told you that this was my biggest section, but I only have 2 left. The next book I read while I was camping, which I'm realizing that a lot of the books that I love, I read while I'm camping. I don't know if I just decided to do that, or maybe I just love them because I was camping while I was reading them and sitting in a hammock and just happy while I was reading. But this one, despite its length, you'll see it's very thin, very short. I annotated a lot. Oh, you saw it. Okay, it's The Great Gatsby. Even though it's so short, it took me so long to read this because I was going back, I was finding connections to my past high school teachers that told me to read this. I'm sorry, but I didn't. But now I did, and I do understand like the green lantern across the lake kind of thing now, or across the, you know, the whole West Egg, you know, all that. I get it now, and I understand why we were told to read it. And I'm kind of glad that I didn't at the time, because I don't know if I would have appreciated it as much as I did when I read it as an adult. A look into the Jazz Age. It's a look at Jay Gatsby in his like big larger circle. There's these beautiful lavish parties, all kinds of things going on. It's set in the 20s. What else is there for you to know? Read it and find out. The last in my classics list for you is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I have the 4 novel, what's it called, omnibus of it. If you've seen the Pride and Prejudice movie, it was just like everything that you like about the movie is like better in the book. Mr. Darcy writing his letter, better in the book. Mr. Darcy like his pining, better in the book. Mr. Collins, so much better in the book. I mean, how can you like, I can't discount such an exemplary vegetable. What excellent boiled potatoes. Like, that's amazing, and the movie is amazing. But like, I would just sat there cackling for like 20 minutes when I was reading the scene in Pride and Prejudice where Mr. Collins is going on and on and on during his proposal to Elizabeth, and he's like, will you marry me? And he was like, no, wait, I know that you're just saying that you can't marry me because you're supposed to say that, but actually blah blah blah, and he's just like keeps like butting in and being like, well actually, and he's just such a pompous fool, and it's just amazing to read. It's so funny. It's my favorite Jane Austen novel that I've read, and I've read most of them. I think the only ones that I haven't read yet are, I don't think I've read Persuasion yet. That might be the only one. Yeah, I think I just need to read Persuasion. Maybe one more, but I can't remember what it is at the moment. Yeah, Pride and Prejudice will always be like my favorite. This video is getting long. Ones that I have left are the fantasy novels, and I knew, and I did that on purpose because the fantasy ones are also the favorite ones. Fantasy, favorite, they're the best. I think most of these are in a series, so this is talking about the whole series of Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Faeries. This book follows Emily, who is writing this Encyclopedia of Faeries, and she goes off and she wants to learn all about like different species and things that she hasn't done, and she goes off on this little adventure, and her rival slash companion is Wendell, which by the way, my sister named her dog after Wendell in this book, and they go off on this little adventure, and it's just sweet and it's fun, and it's another book that kind of reminds me of what Belle in Beauty and the Beast would read if she like had a book list. This would be on her book list. It's sweet, it's low stakes, it's fantasy, it's fun, and I will be reading it again. I think I still have to read the third one in this, but it's definitely super high up on my list to read. So that is Encyclopedia of Faeries. The next one is like, if all of the books are like here, let's go here because they're my favorites. This book is like there. It's so good. It is by an author who we all know, who we all love. He is a big name. Every single time I open YouTube or Instagram or whatever, his little face with his little glasses pop up, and he's just signing off on his stuff, and he's doing his little podcast. It is Mr. Brandon Sanderson himself. The Way of Kings. I've read all the way up through Oathbringer. I'm on Rhythm of War now, and this book skyrocketed. The first time I read it, it went to the absolute top of my list of books that I've ever read. It's so full of characters that you just love and that are so real. It's in there's a magic system that's like, it's like grounded in the world, and you know what will and what won't work, like right when it does. There's never any frustrations. It takes place, this one particularly takes place on the Shattered Plains, which is just the coolest setting I've ever heard of in my whole life, which is like, it's just exactly what it sounds like. Giant plains with like chasms and like weird little bug creatures, and spren, which are like little fairies that follow people around, and there's several there in this book. You're kind of more following like 4 main characters, and then there's like other characters that, like, since this is such a big tome, like also become very prevalent. This one particularly follows Kaladin. At the beginning of the book, he is a slave, and he is a bridge runner, which means he's the front runner to try and bring the bridges over so that they can make it over the chasms. And by they, I mean armies, the army that he is enslaved to. And he's in a very broken state, and throughout this first book, you get to see his journey, and it's incredible. It made me cry, not because it was sad, but because it was just so powerful at the end. So I will be rereading this series after I finish it the first go around. Right now, I have like such a deep annotating system for it. I have different characters or different colors. So like Kaladin is this blue color, and it continues like on from there. There's mostly blue because Kaladin is my favorite, but I do love everyone else as well. But yeah, this is The Way of Kings. Next, we have the OG, the original king of fantasy, J.R.R. Tolkien. And I am deeply ashamed to say that I have only read The Fellowship of the Ring and The Hobbit. So I'm specifically, one of my favorite that I'm discussing right now is The Fellowship of the Ring, because it's just that good. Follows Frodo. He has the ring. It's a bad ring. He has to throw the ring into the fire in order to destroy it, but it's very hard to do. There is one scene in Fellowship of the Ring that is just living in my head forever. And that is scene whenever they're down in the mines of Moria and Gandalf is about to fight against the bad guy, the evil demon thing, and it goes doom, 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 doom. In the movie it says it, you actually hear that people say, like, chanting doom, 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 but in the book it starts out where like you can hear like drum beats, and Tolkien says like he like makes the sound of the drum beat say doom, doom. And while I was reading it, I did not realize right away, because I was just so engrossed in reading it, that it was saying doom, 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 as in they are headed towards their doom right now. It says, they looked back. Dark yawned the archway of the gates under the mountain shadow. Faint and far beneath the earth rolled the slow drum beats. Doom. A thin black smoke trailed out. Nothing else was to be seen. The dale all around was empty. Doom. Grief at last wholly overcame them, and they wept along, some standing and silent, some cast upon the ground. Doom, doom. The drum beats faded. And I just wrote chills. Like, I almost got chills just reading it then. It's even better than the "You shall not pass." Next book is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. And this is a book that I picked up after getting back into reading. It was a booktube recommendation. It like had just come out, and it was like super popular at the time, and everyone was reading The Night Circus. Everyone was reading Caraval and The Night Circus, and I couldn't understand the difference between the two, but I picked up The Night Circus first, and I'm so glad that I did. Not saying I didn't like Caraval. I didn't like Caraval, but I did end up liking the series. But The Night Circus is different, like incomparable. So The Night Circus follows a guy and a girl. They're like magical rivals, but they're also kind of like puppets being like pulled on strings by their masters. It's really interesting. It's very vivid, has like amazing like imagery that you get to see throughout. I remember that there are like second person like chapters, like little interludes, and that was really unique, where it says like you are going through the circus and you're seeing all of these different things, and that was really immersive and something that was like unique to this book that I haven't seen others do. And of course this book has like the perfect like amount of romance for me. Maybe I could have done a little bit more, but of course like our two characters like kind of have a thing going or whatever. It's definitely one that I need to go back and read more about, because as I'm talking about it, I'm realizing it's really fuzzy. And now for the last book. It's the Sarah J. Maas, A Court of Mist and Fury. Ooh, look at that cover. Yes. Once again, placeholder for the whole series. Valaris is my home. Just to put it, just to explain how like much this book means to me. Valaris is my literary home. When I think about, like, if you were to close your eyes, like think about like what would be like your literary home. Maybe it's Hogwarts, maybe it's like in the Shire. Valaris. This is not the most well-written book. It is not the best book. It is not the most profound, but it is my home in this literary sphere. The ACOTAR books. Valoris is home. I can't say why this book in particular is my favorite, but if you know, you know, and I'm sure you do. And I can't wait for the new books to come out, and I'm just about to finish the Third Crescent City book, and it's so good. It's like not good, but it's so good. Oh my gosh. Sorry for any angle change. My phone died because I've been here for too dang long. So I was saying that this book was the only one that I'm talking about this evening that was not in my favorites list originally, and that's because it was in my subpar faves section of my Goodreads, which is usually where I put all of the books that like maybe aren't the most like eloquently written, but like I still just ate up in my soul. This one I had to bring over because it's just, I told you, it's my home. And I just love it so much. And the characters, the journey that Feyre goes on in this book in particular is impactful to me, and I'm gonna stop talking about it now before I spoil something. But if you haven't read it, you better read it. You better read it. Anyways, thank you very much for stopping by and listening to me gush about my books that are my favorites. I did learn a few things about my reading journey. I like really depressing books, and I've always liked fantasy, even as a kid. I think those are my two big takeaways. Oh, there he goes. Anyways, it was my first one, so you can't be too harsh of a critic. Anyways, bye. To my bestie and my sister and anyone else who was here. I'll see you later. Bye.